district for 3 years.
Wow.
You were born?
Oklahoma?
Oklahoma.
Okay, everybody. So today we are going to move forward out of Jeremiah Lamentations. Finally. Yeah. Really? You don't like Jeremiah or Lamentations? Okay.
We just had enough of it.
Okay, well,
I'm depressing enough as it is.
let me move forward here a little.
Bring me a new name.
My dang mouse apparently does not like to work when it's too far away. So let's share this and we can hide this. I say I can hide it.
How many people
Okay.
ever read Obadiah before?
Maybe once.
I don't think I ever have.
I
Yeah,
was
well-
teaching Sunday school class, and we're take a look at Obadiah, and the class went, huh?
Well, fortunately, we're only going to be in Obadiah for 1 week. So, and why do you think that is?
It's only 3
It's short.
pages.
It's
It's only 3 pages.
One chapter.
One chapter, yeah.
It's 2 pages, I think.
It's
Well, it
the,
must be important then.
it's the only one chapter, why is this?
Only one chapter book in the Bible, that's good truth.
No. The
Oh.
only one chapter, why it's not clicking there.
There
There we go, okay. So Obadiah means worshiper of Yahweh or servant of the Lord.
Okay.
The author we attribute to Obadiah. Really, we don't know who wrote it, but most scholars attribute it to this person, Obadiah. Well, I mean, why not?
Yeah,
We have no other idea, maybe.
No argument.
Correct. And when it was written, we don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody really knows. Out of the 16 prophets, 10 of them, we are pretty sure when they were written. 6 of them, Obadiah is one of them. We just don't know. We have to kind of go off what is written in the text,
Okay.
but that doesn't provide us a whole lot of help. So, it's going to make me go all the way over there. Okay, but Obadiah is wonderful because it speaks to something that basically started off Israel. I mean, this goes all the way back to the beginning of Israel, and of course now they think it's the end of Israel. So, so it's a nice place to go at this point. Some observations about Obadiah. The book of Obadiah is only one chapter. It's the only one chapter book in the Old Testament. Okay, there's Jude in I think third John, or well, there's like 2 books in the New Testament that are only one chapter, but Obadiah is the only one chapter one in the Old Testament, and it is never. It's one of the very few books of the Old Testament that are never either mentioned or quoted from in the New Testament. It's the shortest book in the Old Testament, 21 verses. Of course, writing the verses is an English thing or a Western thing. So 640 words. Those are English words. So keep that in mind. Obadiah probably lived in the southern kingdom of Judah, and we get that from when we read the text in here in a few minutes. The alliterations he makes, the allusions he makes, pretty much speak to Judah. So who would know better than that than somebody who lived there? There's 13 Obadiahs, 13 different Obadiahs in the Old Testament. There's 20 mentions of Obadiah, though, but they've been able to collate that down into 13 different Obadiahs. So it's a pretty common word, a pretty common name, much like Michael, which means who is like God. Yeah.
So are we supposed to think that Obadiah was before they had kings?
No, well, I mean, there are Obadiahs prior to the kings, yes.
Yeah.
There's 3 Obadiahs prior to the kings.
Okay.
But I'm just saying that it was a common name,
Okay.
much like Michael is today. 75 straight years of being the most popular boy's name.
Right.
There's a lot of them out there. So some believe Obadiah may have been a contemporary of Elijah and Elisha. So that puts them back, some 400 years prior to the events that we're doing now.
Right.
But others say that he was contemporary of Jeremiah and or Joel, which would put them in the current context. That's kind of where we're following today, okay, for the sake of the class. And because of where they've placed him in Elijah and Elisha, he may be one of the earliest prophets that wrote, if you go back to the earlier time. So Obadiah writes specifically about Edom and some things about Edom. Edom was the descendants of Esau, which included parts of the Ammonites, the Aramites, the Moabites, all those ites over on the eastern side of the Dead Sea. Edom means red, and it specifically refers back to the color of the stew. And remember, Esau sold the birthright for a cup of red stew. Of course, Esau means hairy, so we can call Esau hairy. Hairy. When Esau was born, they called him red when he was born. If you go back and read the story of the birth of Jacob and Esau. They lived in the mountainous area of Seir, so sometimes you will hear them referred to as the people of Seir. And in fact, that may be in most of your translations, the mountains of Seir, the people of Seir, which was south of the Dead Sea. And they were the bitter enemies of the Jews from the time they were born till the time they were not. However, that's not a complete truth, and we'll understand that in a minute. So some of the reasons why they were bitter enemies, and this goes both ways. During the Exodus, Edom refused to allow the children of Israel to pass through their land to get to the promised land. And that's found in Numbers 20. The Edomites opposed Saul. They kept joining with other people, attacking Saul. Saul did okay to repel them, but really didn't subject them. So he didn't really conquer them at all. David and Solomon, David conquered them. Solomon continued that process, so he's kind of included in there. And then there were a few others which are mentioned, Jehoshaphat. Now, the interesting thing about Jehoshaphat, this is a really neat story. Jehoshaphat was king of Judah at the time, and we did read this when we, early on when we were reading. The kingdoms of Edom, Ammon, and Aram had joined together to go against Judah. Well, Judah didn't know what to do. They were panicking because here's these three nations, powerful nations that were coming toward them. And so they prayed. Jehoshaphat, this was one of the good. Remember, I mentioned that there were 20 kings in the south, and about 8 of them were 8 of them were good, but one of them was kind of Jehoshaphat was at one of those because he had great moments, he had bad moments. One of his great moments was he took the people to pray, and they fasted. They set about a nationwide fast because of this enemy coming at them. And what they heard from the Lord, the message they got from the Lord was, march out there and stand there. Just watch what happens. And so they do that. Now, Jehoshaphat does do one thing God didn't tell him to do, but that's okay. He set apart the priests, which were the Korahites, some of the Levites that were there. He set them up front along with some other selected people and had them sing praises to God. And so as they're singing, those three nations who have devised their whole battle plan to surround and flank the Israelites come around and basically destroy each other. They kill each other. And so that was the mark of God in that moment, that there was no way Israel could defend itself at the moment. And God provided their salvation there. And then we get to Jehoram. The Edomites successfully rebelled against Jehoram. Jehoram was the king of the north that he was able to subject them, to beat them in battle, and they put kind of a puppet king in place. Well, that puppet king rebelled along with some of the other nations around him. They successfully earned their freedom from the nation of Israel. And that's found in 2 Kings 8. In time, Edom, just like all the other nations in the Middle East there, were conquered by Assyria and then by Babylon. In the 5th century BC, the Nabateans, they were a group that lived in the Negev Desert, which we will read in the text today. They forced the Edomites to leave their native country. And that pushed the Edomites further north into Palestine. And over time, they became known as the Idumeans. And the area, even today, is still referred to at times as Idumea. Okay. But what makes that so remarkable is I told you all of these thrones join together, because what happens with the Idumeans is that Herod is born. He's an Idumean. So what does that make him? That makes him a child of Esau. That makes him a bitter enemy of the Jews. He became king of Judea under Rome in 37 BC. He was the one at the beginning of, I believe, Luke, that orders the murder of all the male children after the kings come to worship God. They give Herod the message. Herod says, "Oh no, we can't have two kings, and so we're going to kill all the male children." So that was the murder of the innocents. The Idumeans did take part in the rebellion of Jerusalem against Rome and were defeated along with the Jews when Titus conquered Jerusalem in 70 AD. That was the fall of the final. That was the destruction of the temple, which has since not been built yet. Okay? The fact that they took place meant that they felt some kind of identity with Jerusalem. So when I said that they would be bitter enemies till the end, at the very end, they did fight with their brothers. It's interesting to note that while the Edomites applauded the destruction of the temple by the Babylonians, and we just read that a couple weeks ago in Lamentations 4, that they tear them down, tear them down. A number of them, Josephus numbers them 20,000 Idumeans died trying to defend Jerusalem during Titus's destruction of Jerusalem. So in the text we're going to read today, there's a few things that Obadiah does prophesy. It says that Edom's going to be destroyed forever. That's in verse 10. There will be no survivors from the house of Esau. That's in verse 18. With the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, they're never mentioned as Edomites ever again in historical or in history, except when we're writing, when people are writing about history. So, it's not like they didn't know about it. They didn't, it's not like they never heard the message, because Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Amos, all of those prophesied that Edom would eventually fall, that they were going to get their due for what they did to Israel as a whole. So we get into the text today. And if someone would like to read that out of the way, verses 1 through 3.
I'll do that. The vision of Obadiah. This is what the sovereign Lord says about Edom. We have heard a message from the Lord. An envoy was sent to the nations to say, "Rise, let us go against her for battle. See, I will make you small among the nations. You will be utterly despised. The pride of your heart has deceived you, you who live in the clefts of the rocks and make your home on the heights, you who say to yourself, who can bring me down to the ground?"
Okay, so in verse 1, an envoy was sent to the nations to say, "Rise, let's go against her for battle." That is where we get the two different scholarly time frames. One of them believes that it happened during Amaziah's time frame, when they went, and y'all remember that Edom laughed when Egypt and some of those other nations that had joined together came in and took the things from the temple away. They believe that happened during that time frame, which would have been back during Elijah, back during Ahaz was the king of Judah at the time. So that would have been Elijah, Elisha, after Ahab. Okay. Well, Ahab was in the north. Ahaz was in the south. I know, all confusing. But the other, they think that could refer to what's happening currently. And like I said, that's why I placed this here, because they believe, some scholars believe that it's talking about the Babylonian.
So the only thing that stayed the same was the north and the south, right?
Pretty much. Okay, and then it goes on to talk about what Edom, Edom had a big mouth. Edom had a big mouth, and of course that we should have known that from the stew they ate. So, 4 through 6.
I'll do that. But even if you soar as high as eagles and build your nest among the stars, I will bring you crashing down, says the Lord. If thieves come at night and rob you, what a disaster awaits you. They would not take everything. Those who harvest grapes always leave a few for the poor, but your enemies will wipe you out completely. Every nook and cranny of Edom will be searched and looted. Every treasure will be found and taken.
Okay. During both times, or during the 2 times that I mentioned in the time frame that we can't decide from, both times Edom sat back. And as Israel was being led away, the first time they were led away to the south, Edom sat there and pillaged what was left. When the Babylonians finally made their march to Jerusalem and destroyed Jerusalem and took everybody to the north, Edom did the same thing. They ransacked what was left, and even on the road, while they're in their march up north, they attack them and take what possessions they happen to get with them before they were run out of town. So Edom is not good. 7 through 9.
All your allies will force you to the border. Your friends will deceive and overpower you. Those who eat your bread will set a trap for you, but you will not detect it. In that day, declares the Lord, will I not destroy the wise men of Edom, men of understanding in the mountains of Esau, the warriors. Sorry, I can't read anymore.
Your warriors, T-men, will be terrified, and everyone Esau mountain will be cut down in the slaughter.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, thank you, Christine. Does anybody have a different translation for that phrase, those who eat your bread will set a trap for you?
Where is that? That's what?
That's middle of verse 7, towards the end of verse 7. I was just curious.
Mine just says your trusted friends will set traps for you.
Yeah.
Well, mine puts a little parentheses in there, it says there's no understanding.
Correct. The phrase from Hebrew, they don't know what it means. When we talk about when the Bible is translated, we try to, the NIV, which is what I'm using, the NIV is really good about doing a thought-by-thought translation, okay? And so what they do is when it comes to cliches and phrases and things like that, we do our best to try to make that happen. Well, when a certain phrase doesn't make sense to us in English, we try to convert that into something that does make sense to us. And thus, this is what the NIV translators
The
did.
basic rule of translation, as literal as possible, as free as necessary.
The one example, I laugh because I've told this several times. When I talk with Misha, one time during choir practice, he said, we're going to sing Trust and Obey this Sunday. And I said, well, how does that, can you say trust and obey in Russian?
Yeah.
And he said, well, there's really not a direct translation. It comes out more like trust but verify. And
I thought you were gonna say they didn't do either one.
Words in the Russian language.
But I said, are there any other phrases like that? And he was very quick to say that, yes, there's one. He said that there's a phrase they use which goes, let's see if I can remember it. Literally translated, it's like a crawfish whistling on a mountaintop.
Yes, I've heard that. Yeah.
Does that make any sense? No. In Russian it does. In English, we would say when pigs fly, or when hell freezes over.
Yeah.
So eat your bread and, Tribune, eat your bread. My footnote says, indicates some act of treachery on the part of previously trusted close friends.
They're brothers. They're blood brothers.
Yeah,
And the fact that Esau sold his birthright, I'm telling you, it goes all the way back to the very beginning.
okay,
And so when the NIV translators translated this, they're using that imagery of selling that birthright for food. And they're taking it and putting a food element the other way around.
okay.
The same people who sold their birthright are going to offer you food and then kill you.
Okay.
So, of course, let me just say, Jacob was not innocent. Okay.
He wasn't? He
I need
wasn't?
to get that out there. Jacob was not innocent, but
You're just a Democrat.
Oh, gee.
your Warriors T-Man. T-Man is just a, that would be a word for something, like in the U.S. Army, we've got the Delta Force. It's their special force group. They're mercenaries. So. Of course, that kind of made, you know, if you say, T-men, you know, we used to say G-men for the FBI or whatever, yeah. And so I think I find that funny. Okay, 10 through 12.
I'll do that. Because of the violence against your brother Jacob, you will be covered with shame. You will be destroyed forever. On the day you stood aloof, while strangers carried off his wealth, and foreigners entered his gates, and cast lots for Jerusalem, you were like one of them. You should not look down on your brother in the time of misfortune, or rejoice over the people of Judah in the day of their destruction, nor boast so much in the day of their trouble.
Okay.
It's schadenfreude.
Huh?
That's what's called schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude.
Malicious joy.
And that is the charge against Edom, which fits under that category of, and what does God hate? Pride.
Yep.
And it fits under that category of pride.
Somebody wanting in the door.
None of them are
They're
organized.
upstairs
They're wanting to come through the ceiling.
Let them in.
So pride was what caused Israel to be taken by the Assyrians. Pride was what caused Judah to be taken by the Babylonians. Edom is going to get their due to their pride.
Okay.
Okay, 13 through 15.
You should not march through the gates of my people in the day of their disaster, nor go over them in their calamity in the day of their disaster, nor seize their wealth in the day of their disaster. You should not wait at the crossroads to be cut down their fugitives, nor hand over their survivors in the day of their trouble. The day of the Lord is near for all nations. As you have done, it will be done to you. Your deeds will return upon your own head.
So this is basically telling Edom, you get what you gave. And if we use a New Testament type of analogy, at the end of time, when God judges the peoples, God has a book or has rules, and people will be judged. Christians will be judged on how they, what they should have done as Christians. But there are those that do not follow Christianity. And so this, and also I should have prepared better. There's a phrase in, I believe it's in 2 Corinthians, which says you will be judged according to your rules. And so Edom is breaking even their own ethical statutes when they're doing all this. And so that last phrase, as you have done, it will be done to you. In the New Testament, Jesus said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That would be the Jewish rules.
So the nation's rules or the individual rules?
Both.
Both.
Mhm.
Well,
That's why here in the United States, mental health is a big issue because, we try to we try to provide a legality for, what's the legal rule for it. Well, mental health fits outside of that.
that's right.
How do you charge someone with known mental health with a crime if they really don't know what they're doing?
That's right.
So anyway, but that's not the case for Edom. They know exactly what they're doing. What was that? Y'all seen the movie Sister Act 2? Y'all seen Sister Act? Well, Sister Act 2, without giving too much of it away, Whoopi Goldberg's back as a nun, and she's building a choir of kids at a Catholic school, and they end up going to an all-state competition. Well, the head of I'm ad-libbing a little bit here and embellishing a little bit. So, okay. But one of the heads of the church gets wind that she's not a real nun. And so he grabs the monks who are also part of this to go track down the other nuns and the students to to get them from entering the competition, to stop them from being in there. Of course, all the nuns and all the monks know that she's not a nun. Only the heads don't know. They've kept that secret from them. So at one point, the monks, and they've all arrived at this arena where they're supposed to be singing, where the groups are supposed to be singing, and the monks find an opportunity to trap the head of the church in a closet.
He's like a board chair or something.
And and as they do, one of the monks, who reminds me of Bill Ringwald, looks and sounds just like him,
You told Bill that.
I think I have. But he turns around and says, Lord, forgive me, for we know exactly what we do. If you imagine Bill saying that, that's exactly how it sounded. Okay, 16 through 19, or 18, I'm sorry.
So Paul, you want to do it?
I'll try it, okay. Because just as you drank on my holy mountain, all the nations will drink continually. They will drink and swallow and become as if they had never existed. But on Mount Zion, there will be those who escape, and it will be holy. And the house of Jacob will possess their possessions. Through how far, 19?
Through 18.
Okay. Then the house of Jacob will be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame. But the house of Esau will be stubble, and they will set them on fire and consume them. So there will be no survivor of the house of Esau, for the Lord has spoken.
Ooh, the Lord has spoken.
Wow.
There's a lesson there. Don't make God mad at you.
Ever.
Well,
ever.
Again, we're sticking with this food analogy with the drinking anyway on the holy hill. After in ancient Near East, their most important altars and temples were built on the hills. That's where they worshiped, were on tops of the hills. And so when a nation conquered a particular nation, that's one of the first places they would go, is they'd go up there and they would party over the ruins of the people they conquered. And so it's an analogy that they've gone up there and they drank, they were merry, but not only that, they drank so much that they would be as if they had never been. They've gotten so drunk that they passed out.
So the whole nation's a mountain, though. That's all they do.
Well, what's interesting to
What else
struck me
are you
here
gonna do?
is that one is in flame and is in fire and all that. There will be something left, but these out there, nothing.
Yeah.
It's gone.
There you go.
As Christians, 2,000 years after the coming of Christ, we see more importance to the words fire and flame, because that represents the spirit.
Right,
Now, probably didn't represent that to Obadiah.
right.
However, it does have quite a bit of meaning for us. So, okay, for the last few verses here, verses 19 through 21.
People from Negev will occupy the mountains of Esau.
Oh, stop right there. That's the, I forgot their name. The
Oh,
Nabateans. Those are the Nabateans,
okay.
okay? The people of the Negev. Okay, go ahead.
And the people from the foothills will possess the lands of the Philistines. They will occupy the fields of Ephraim and Samaria, and Benjamin will possess Gilead. This company of Israelites excels those who are in Canaan and possesses the land as far as Zeravath. The exiles from Jerusalem are set in Sabard, will possess the towns of Negev. The Levites will go up to Mount Zion to govern the mountains of Esau, and the kingdom will be the Lord.
The kingdom will be whose? Israel's?
The
Lord's. This is Obadiah's prophecy for the coming back of Israel. Of course, the very verse 19, the people of the Negev, the Nabateans, they're going to drive out the Edomites, and they're going to send them off to wherever they can find a place, which would be south, really, really far south. And of course, God uses that because now Edom is not there. Israelites have a place to come back to that they don't have to worry about Edom. And it just, it kind of goes and says, so basically those city names that are listed there are the limits of where God had promised the land to begin with, in their common names, that the land that he promised to Abraham. So, that last, I love that last verse. Deliverers will go up onto Mount Zion to govern the mountains of Esau, and the kingdom will be the Lord's. And that's how it should be. We live in the kingdom of God right now, at least the partially realized kingdom, as we await the fulfillment of God's kingdom.
So my footnote says, this is the conclusion of a prophecy and the final outcome of history. The last book of the Bible echoes this theme in Revelations.
That's what I was thinking of. The go through Revelation and all of it at the very end, that everything is now the
Everything
Lord's.
is God's.
Right.
So see, just like last week, you are where all these different throne perspectives fit together. Obadiah is a wonderful read. It does not give very good message towards Edom, but it's a very short read and it provides a lot of info. Obadiah is one of those that if you sat down, you could probably spend 6 months studying it verse for verse and correlating it to the history of Israel, and especially as it applies to Edom.
You can see that.
From the birth of Jacob and Esau until right then. So it's a wonderful thing, and it's a shame that it's not even in the lectionary.
Yeah.
So that's probably why we don't.
Well, that's a great hope for the Israelites that here this enemy that we've had forever will be gone and we can come and be in our promised land again. That's a great hope.
Of course, we do have fairly recent, in the grand scheme of things, recent problems that mimic this, such as the Civil War, brother against brother. Even in Nazi Germany, people selling out their families for protection from the Nazis. So it's something that unfortunately human nature just can't get over. But eventually,
The
something
kingdom will be
will
yours.
conquer in human nature. So The kingdom will be the Lord. So we're going to close for that. I did not prepare for next week yet, so I don't know what to tell you. Same thing. I'll have Shauna send out an email. Did y'all see the email at all this
Yes.
week? I mean, it came out in like in the light or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
I heard it at,
Men's group yesterday? Okay. Yeah, Shauna sends out like on Wednesday or Thursday, a little bit, In the Know. Maybe that's what it's called, In the Know.
Yeah.
And, yeah, well, In the Light, I think,
The
is the devotional. In the
And then
Know
there's
comes out the
another-
next day.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of an update
Here's
of
what's
the
going on.
activities going on. So, and it was the very first thing. It was just a brief, I mean, if you look to the main text, you would have skipped it kind of thing. So, okay, well, we're gonna close for today. Thank y'all for being here
Thank you.
and look forward
Thank
to
you,
next
Mike.
week.
Appreciate your time and effort.
enjoyed it. Yay, Astros.
Oh, that's, we're in a dilemma, we used to wear